Okay, so as we said, we're in Ephesians 3 talking about uh, the revealed mystery that of Israel and the Gentiles being heirs together and members of the same of one body and shares in the promise in Christ. And as we said, this promise is referring to the promises that were made to Abraham. And Paul also mentions it in Galatians 3:29. And if you are Christ, then you are Abraham's seed, heirs according to the promise. So for Christians, we have these promises in God and in Christ, and they're Abrahamic in nature. So for us to understand the promises that have been made to us and how God fulfills them, we should understand how he fulfilled those promises to Abraham. And the promises that God made to Abraham centered around God blessing him. We talked about this last week. There in Genesis 12, 1 through 3, blessing is mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And he's going to bless him with the land, and he's also going to curse those who curse Abraham, and that means that he's going to watch over Abraham. But important to keep in mind that the word blessing means fruitfulness. We see this in Psalm 1. Talks about blessed is the man who doesn't walk in the counsel of the ungodly, or stand in the path of sinners, or sit in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. So that's all the language of blessing there. Bringing forth fruit, green leaves that don't wither, prospering. So all the idea is of tree by a river is strong. It's has all kinds of vitality, and this is what God is promising Abraham. Now, Abraham's response to these promises is he gets up and leaves Haran and takes everything with him, including his nephew Lot. And we said last week that he wasn't going on vacation. He trusted fully in God's promises. He took everything and he traveled to Canaan. Now, anyone remember how long that trip would have taken him? Those who weren't here excluded from that question. Beth? About, yes, 1 to 2 months. Depending how fast they traveled. Now, they had herds traveling with them, so they would have had to stop, maybe move a little slower. So it's possible that he traveled 2 months to get to Canaan. And when he gets to Canaan, he travels a total of, it looks like he traveled 400 miles on foot. The route that they would have taken at that time would have been about 400 miles. And then he travels probably another 200 miles towards the Negev, towards Bethel. Now, we said that that was a tough journey. On the way, he stops when he enters Canaan. He builds 2 altars. What does that say about him, that he's building altars?
He's recognizing God.
Yes.
Providing for their journey.
Yes. Now, where is he building altars?
In a foreign land.
Okay. And what do the people around him, what do they worship? Baal, Asherah, all pagan deities. So when he's building his altars there, what's he saying to the people around him? Yep, I don't worship your gods. I worship a different God. I worship the true God. So is that a big step to take in a hostile environment with tribes that are not your friends? You don't worship their gods? what does that say to those people? It tells them we're not a part of you, right? We're separate from you. So we gotta see the size of that for Abraham. Building altars are a sign of his faith, sign of him putting out his flag publicly in a hostile environment. That he worships a different God and he's not a part of worshiping their gods, and that would have all been observed. People tend not to take kindly when you go into their land and don't start participating in their culture. So this was countercultural and spiritually separating himself. So what's that? So what does that say about his faith that he stepped forward that way? Tim, what's that say about his faith that he's building altars to his God in a hostile environment? Steadfast and sure. That's a good way to put it. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. He's just built 2 altars. He's in the promised land, and what happens? Verse 10. Famine arrives, right? A famine arrives. Now, when it comes to blessing and famine, blessing means fruitfulness. And the opposite to blessing is what? Cursing. What's a famine? It's a curse, right? Now, we don't know why there was a famine. Disease amongst the crops, maybe lack of rain, whatever happened. But this land is cursed. And last week we talked about how this would have affected Abraham. Abraham's been told he's going to this land that God's going to give him it. He's going to be blessed, and he goes in there, sets up his altars, worships God, puts his flag up that he's separate from everybody else, and a famine hits. And we said last week that the effect on that would have been confusing for him. He just traveled 400 miles out of a food basket to arrive in a famine, and might have felt, and this is all conjecture, he might have felt let down by God because God had made these promises that he was going to receive blessing, and now he's in the midst of cursing. And we talked about how at times we can feel that way as well because we're God's people. We have the promise of God. Abraham had these promises of God, and it didn't work out for Abraham maybe the way Abraham expected it to work out. And at times we might think this blessing that God has proclaimed over us that we share in, that it's not working out the way we thought it would. Now, we said that we asked the question, had God let Abraham down here? The answer to that question is what? No, he hadn't let him down. But if Abraham's having a bit of crisis of faith, what was let down? If it wasn't God that let him down, what let him down?
The world around.
What do you mean, Nathan?
Well, like we said, we don't know why the famine was there. But he was in this situation. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't God's fault. So, I mean, you could blame the wickedness of the people around. You could blame... I don't know. It's kind of hard to answer that question.
Yeah. But if he was having a crisis of faith, what was it that...
Well, from his perspective, he let himself down and he let everyone else let him down.
Right.
He was the one that decided to go.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. He led people here, so everybody's looking to him because he's told them this message. God has said, we're going to a land. He's going to bless us. He's going to be with us. And then they walk into cursing. But we have to consider this, that Abraham may have had expectations how that blessing was coming. God was blessing him, but his expectations were different when it came to the promise. Yeah, so his expectations let him down. And last week we said that we can be very much the same. We have promises from God to bless us, and we expect those blessings to come in a certain way. And when they don't come, at times we might feel like God's not fulfilling his promises, but he's not fulfilling our expectations. So we have to make sure that our expectations are rooted in how God blesses and not how we want him to bless or we expect him to bless. Because we do tell people from when they're children within this culture that God loves you and has a wonderful plan for your life. It is true, but it's not true the way we understand it in the United States of America. When we think God's going to bless us, what do we tend to expect?
Success and money and health.
All,
Things.
all of those things. We don't expect to go to step out in faith, to follow Christ and end up in the midst of a famine-like scenario, what looks like cursing. But this is how God operates. So it's very important for us to keep that in mind. Now, so he's in the midst of a famine. What does he do? According to the text,
Spiraled down into self-pity and said, woe is me. Oh, no, that's not what it said.
now, well, according to the text, what does he do?
Journeyed on. Got to Egypt.
He goes to Egypt. Egypt is on the Fertile Crescent. It's got an abundance of food, so he's going down there to get food. Now, is there any indication when he's in this situation prior to leaving for Egypt that he reached out to God? Anything in the text that gives you the impression that he reaches out to God here? Maybe in the midst of his confusion, the midst of his disappointment.
Well, it says he built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord. But then it says he journeyed on, still going toward the Negev.
Yep.
So there was a famine, so he went down to Egypt. So
Is there anything in the text that indicates before he goes to Egypt that he's calling out to God? There's nothing really in the text that would indicate that, and then Abraham called upon the name of the Lord and went to Egypt. Right? There could be a glaring silence here as things start to unfold. Keep that in mind. Now he's going down to Egypt. From where he is, it's the travel time at a minimum. If he traveled quickly, would have been 2 weeks to get down there. It looks more like a 3-week journey to get down there, to get the food. So keep that in mind as we see what happens when he's outside of Egypt. Verse 10, now there was a famine in the land. Abraham went down to Egypt to dwell there, for the famine was severe in the land. Now that's a 2 to 3 week journey. And it came to pass when he was close to entering Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, indeed I know that you're a woman of beautiful countenance. Therefore it will happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say to his wife, they'll say, this is his wife, they'll kill me, but they'll let you live. Please say you're my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and that I may live because of you. Now what's Abraham been doing on this, as he's been traveling 2 to maybe possibly 3 weeks on the road to Egypt? What's he been doing? Because he says this to Sarai prior to, and I'm going to call her Sarah because they changed the names later. It's Abraham and Sarah. he says this before they go into Egypt, just at the border.
He's been making a plan, thinking through this.
Yeah, he's been thinking through this, and what's he been? What's
Worrying about it.
he's worrying about it, right? And what's he worried about? Okay. Oh, there you go, right? Uh, his own survival. When he talks to his wife here, how many times does he talk about her or talk about himself? How many times does he use I? Yeah, I know that you're one beautiful countenance. Therefore, it'll happen when the Egyptians see you that they will say, "This is his wife," and they'll kill me, but they will let you live. Please say you're my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and I may live because of you. So now he's concluded two things here. His main conclusion in his worries is that the Egyptians will take his wife and they'll kill him. Now, how does he know this is going to happen?
Reputation.
Yeah, well, the Egyptians, they were pagans, right? Pharaoh's ruling down there, so uh, he had power over life and death in his mind. But how does he know this is going to happen? That's the context of his worry. These are lawless people. But does he know this is going to happen? Because he said to her, I know this is going to happen. But he doesn't know this is going to happen, right? So what has he done here with this idea that I know this is going to happen? Caitlin.
He let his paranoia cloud his judgment.
Okay. He's let his paranoia cloud his judgment. He's created a fantasy, right? In his mind, over 2 or 3 weeks, he's come up with this scenario and he's decided this is going to happen to me. They're going to take my wife, they're going to kill me, and I know it. But the fact is, he doesn't know it. But in his mind, he's created a scenario that is now affecting his decision making. Now, in his discussion with Sarah, how much does he mention God? 0. Right? Doesn't mention God there. And what has God promised to Abraham? Remember, I'll bless those that bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And that's a promise of what? Said it earlier. Protection, right? Yeah, he's going to watch over Abraham. And where is that promise in Abraham's mind now?
Nowhere.
So what does that say about his trust in God's promises here? His faith. Sorry? What does that say about his faith?
Doesn't seem to be very strong.
Seems to have failed at this time. And the reason for that is what?
He hasn't been consulting with the Lord.
Possible. It's possible. There seems to be a silence of in this. This is a stressful situation, right? It's a famine. He's got to feed all these people. Gets to the promised land. He's disappointed, possibly. Just made a huge journey to get there, and it didn't turn out the way he expected. His expectations are down. He's in the midst of hardship. He's in the midst of suffering. He's in the midst of a strange country with a strange, hostile people. Do you think that maybe Abraham imagined that life with God behind him might have been a bit easier? Yep. How do you think he felt about having gone on this adventure at this point?
Possibly regrets.
Possible.
Yeah.
It's possible. We have to get our feet into the man's shoes. He wasn't a robot. And that's important because remember, these are the promises of God being fulfilled, and we are also experiencing God's promises to us. And we can learn from Abraham's situation here. Now, what's Abraham's solution to his imagined problems?
Lying.
Yeah, he's going to lie. He's going to deceive, right? He's going to tend to think, well, let's forget about the whole God thing here. Let's go with a shrewd plan. How's this lie going to affect Sarah?
She's gonna lose respect for him.
Because he's involving her in it, right?
Yeah.
So now he's making her a co-conspirator.
Well, he would have, like you said, he would have convinced the whole family to go on this big long trek, all in the name of God, all in the name of God's provision and God's promises. And now when it gets hard, he's like running away like a dog with his tail between his legs, trying to squirrel out of situations and figure it out
Yep.
without consulting God.
Yeah. And remember, this is not even happening. This is in his mind,
Right.
right? This is all something he's created in his mind that's going to happen. And this would affect her faith as well. And remember, in this situation, Abraham's number one concern is what? His own safety, right? It's all, at this point, it's become all about him, right? He doesn't really have grounds to be afraid here. He is in a dangerous circumstances. He is traveling in a foreign land. But has God fulfilled his promises to take care of him so far? He has, right? That's a yes. Now who does Abraham trust to take care of his imagined problems? Himself, right? Himself. What does Abraham think he can do if his imagined problems, they're going to take his wife, they're going to kill him? What does Abraham think he's going to be able to do with this whole deception? Tim, what's he trying to do here? What's the word that pretty much sums up what Abraham's trying to do?
He's trying to deceive them, trick them.
Yes, but at the root of that,
Trying to escape.
the idea of escape, but at the root of it is Abraham trying to do what? In this imagined situation. What word describes what Abraham is trying to do? Roger? Control it, right? Abraham has imagined a bad situation coming, right? And in this imagined bad situation, Abraham's trying to take the reins of power. He's come up with this scheme. We know it wasn't from God. So he's trying to take control. So at the bottom of Abraham's lack of faith, or his faith crisis, is what? At the bottom of it.
Control.
Yep. He's not trusting who to be in control. He's not trusting God. So at the bottom of it, he wants to be in control. Now, why is it so hard for Abraham to let God be in control? Is it fear has taken hold of him, right? Uh, but in the midst of his fear, what should Abraham have done?
Trusted God. Prayed about it. Just putting confidence in him.
Because it doesn't sound like for these 2 to 3 weeks on the road that he's been doing that, because he wouldn't have come to the conclusion that he came to. Now, what if you were transported back in time? Abraham was in the famine. He's getting ready to go off to Egypt. Hasn't consulted with the Lord. What would you have said to him? If he was in this agitated, disappointed, confused state, what would you have said to him? Tim. Okay, anyone else? Now we know how the story unfolds. We have that knowledge. What would you say to him? Trust, put it in the hands of the one that's in control. Caitlin?
I'd say trust him and take a nap because he's been traveling to Egypt, which if they're traveling and there's a famine, they probably want to get there quickly, which could mean he's tired, exhausted, which can be a root cause of fear and troublesome thoughts. So take a nap, like pray and take a nap.
Yeah, I would say probably his plan and scheme in this imaginary problem would have been coming up at night when he was trying to put his head on the pillow. So what else would you have said? You were having a conversation with him.
I'd remind him of how God's provided for him thus far. Because when you really look at, like you said, it's 400 miles. That's about what it takes to drive to Denver. 7 hours would probably took him 2 months. And how do you feed all the people that you're with when you're walking down the road for that long of time? Like there's a lot of logistics that God would have taken care of for him and provided for him. And so just reminding him of God caring for him and God's promises, just reminding him of that to help him kind of assure himself and remember who sent him on this quest.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Good stuff. Anybody else? What would you say to him?
I'd probably freak out.
What?
I'd probably freak out. I'd probably be like, I don't know what's happening. You said we would be fine, and we're not fine, and we're gonna all die.
No, I'm talking about with you having the knowledge from Scripture, how it's all going to work out. But
If I didn't know, if I was in the situation.
no, I'm talking about if you knew. What would you say to Abraham having the knowledge that you have? He's in the faith crisis, not you. Javen, what would you say to him?
If he knew what was going on.
Yeah. If you know the rest of Scripture, you know the rest of his story.
Honestly, I'd probably the same exact thing. Take it now. Honestly, I agreed 100% with Caitlin's response.
Roger, what would you say to him? I think I would tell him it's all going to be all right. God's going to fulfill his promise to you. It looks bad at the moment, but this is all going to work out for your good. And also might say God's fulfilling his promise. It's just not the way he expected it to happen. And try to encourage the man. Let him know that it's all going to be all right. Now, what should Abraham have done? What was his responsibility in this situation?
Step up and be the leader, and make sure no one else has to deal with his. Well, I mean, show everyone that it's going to be all right because God's in control.
Yes.
Get it done.
And that's what we call trust, right? It's his responsibility here was to trust because God had made promises, to trust in God because God's faithful. That was his responsibility. Now, do we ever find ourselves in unexpected suffering even though we've trusted in the promises of God? Or we do.
All the time.
Yeah, famine-like situations, right? Now, how does that make you feel when you're in those situations?
Out of control. Scared.
Scared,
Full of worry.
just like our friend Abraham, right? This is why it's important for us to understand that we have the same promises as Abraham had. We've got Abrahamic faith, but Abrahamic faith will bring us into these situations that are scary, that worry us. Do we ever act like Abraham in these when these things happen? Yes, we do, right? Why is that?
We're impatient. We expect things to happen. If if we don't expect things to happen exactly how we think they should happen, then we expect them to happen when we think they should happen. And when neither of those things take place, we start to try to figure things out on our own. And we get impatient.
Figure things out on our own. What does that mean?
Well, like you mentioned, we seem less likely to consult the Father, and we just try to figure it out based on what's sitting right in front of us.
And what's another word? When we say figure it out, what are we really talking about?
Control.
Okay, we come back to the control question, right?
Yep.
And that's what Abraham was struggling with because Abraham wanted to be in control, and the results of that, he lets his worries take hold of him, and he starts trying to take the reins of power. Now, why is it so hard for us to allow God to be in control at those times? When our anxiety and our worries get a hold of us?
Because it's unknown. And we don't know what's going to happen. God does, but we can't know. And we want to know. We like knowing.
Okay, now if we have the promises of God to bless us, as Abraham had the blessings of God promises to bless him, do we know what's going to happen if God has promised to bless us, even in times where we're worried and things are not going the way we want them to? Do we know what's coming? What's coming to us?
Life. Eternal.
That's correct. But in this world, as we live in this world, God has made promises to us, as He made promises to Abraham. And the big central truth was the blessing, right? So if we're in the midst of anxiety and worry and situations that are uncomfortable and we don't like, do we know what's coming to us? Because from God's promises.
What do you got?
What is coming to us? Blessing, right? Fruitfulness. Are we in doubt about that? That God is going to bless us? Well, we shouldn't be. We shouldn't be, right? Because God fulfills His promises, right? But we're not in the dark, even in the midst of the kind of famine situations and our disappointments. We know what God's going to do. God's going to bless us. Now, is it going to come the way we expect it? Probably not. But when you know blessings coming to you, what word in the Bible describes knowing that blessing is coming? That God is going to do you good. What word in the Bible says that you know that good is coming to you and coming to us? There's confidence, and the confidence is based on our faith and hope. That's what the word, biblical word, hope is. Biblical word hope does not mean, oh, we hope we get a touchdown in the last seconds to win the game and we throw a Hail Mary. That's not what the biblical word hope means. The biblical word hope means knowing that good is coming to us, and that gives us confidence to move forward, right? So, and our hope is in who? In God and his faithfulness, and his faithfulness go back to his promises again. God doesn't make promises he doesn't keep. So in the midst of our worries and our fears, we need to come back to that we know what God's doing. He's blessing us. We know good is coming. We know fruitfulness is coming. And not give way to our fears. So how do we develop this trust in God's promises? How do we develop trust in God's promises?
Well, going back and looking as far as like this where he did provide at the end, and it's a true story, and we know that he did. So going back to those and seeing people that are just like us going through the same situations.
Exactly with the same promises that we have, right? But again, remember, we got to adjust our expectations. If we don't adjust our expectations, we're setting ourselves up for a crisis of faith. We have to expect suffering. We got to expect hardship, and do not see that as God failing in his promises to us to bless us. Blessing is coming. But we go back to, if you are going to trust anyone, if you're going to develop trust in anyone, you look at two things. One, what they do, and what else?
Results.
We can look at the results, but also what they say, right? What they say and what they do. That's how you develop trust. So if we're going to develop trust in God, they'll stand up in adverse situations. We need to do what Bethan said. Go and see how he treated people with Abrahamic faith and see that he always followed through. Go and listen to his words and see how all those words came to pass. Now, there's one other thing. If we're struggling with worry, how do we deal with anxiety apart from going to bed and sleeping, which can at times when you're worrying be difficult to do? How do we deal with worry and anxiety in the midst of difficulties?
One, go to God, but also go to the fellow Christians around you.
Okay, God has not left us without help. In fact, God always works through his servants. He seldom sends angels in the Bible. It's a very small a minority of situations where he sends angels. He tends to send his servants to help his servants, like the prophets to Israel, or the judges to Israel, or to raise up a king. But what else? If we're coming up with imagined terrifying situations that we have to take control that are not happening, just like Abraham, what should we be doing that will help us deal with that? Remember the promises. Okay, we want to go back there again.
Yeah.
But there's something else we can do. When it comes to worry and fear, what time period are those set in? Do we tend to worry about the past? No, we don't tend to worry about the past. So what time period are our worries set in? The future. Generally, someone used it before, fear of the future, right? So our worries are set in the future. So what can we do that will alleviate worry? Bethan.
Focus on today and now and leave tomorrow to God.
And what should we focus on today?
The blessings that He's given us.
Exactly. This, and we call that doing what? What do we call that? Focusing on the blessings of the day. How does the Bible describe that practice? Giving thanks. Right? Giving thanks is said in this today. Right? How much does the Bible talk about giving thanks? Right? Giving thanks is the cure to worry, because thanks is based in this time period. Our worries are set in the future. It's very hard to be focused on the present and worrying about the future at the same time. Now, we can be like spiritual gymnasts and do those in a day, because sometimes I'm thankful in the morning, but by the afternoon I'm freaking out about what's going to happen next week.
Right.
But if we're worrying, how much thanks should we be giving? Even more, right? Because remember, giving thanks is not that God likes to hear that his children say, "Oh, thank you very much for what you've done." It's the cure for your anxiety. It's the cure for worry. Now, do we have things to be thankful for right now? What have we got to be thankful for today? If you're worrying that you're going to get sick in the future, what should you be thankful for today? Your health, right? We're all reasonably healthy. We're not all 100%, but we're healthy today, right? If you're worried that your bills are not going to get paid in 3 months, what should we be thankful for today? They're paid today, right? Now, if you're worried about the security of your children, that bad things are going to happen to your children, what should we be thankful for today? That everybody's safe today, right? If we're worried that the country's going to collapse, oh no, it's all going to come down in flames, the whole thing's going to turn into anarchy, what should we be thankful for today? That it's not, right? And how often do we do this? How often do we give thanks that I'm healthy today, I'm fed today, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my apartment, I won't be able to pay my bills, but today I've got a roof over my head. Today there's stability. If I'm afraid of lawlessness, well, today it's not lawless. If you're going to deal with your anxiety and your worry and your fears, thankfulness is the only solution there is. If I'm afraid that I'm going to die, what should I be thankful for today? I'm not dead, right? I'm alive. I'm alive today. And if I'm afraid a loved one's going to die, they're alive today. Now, ultimately, why are we fed? Why are we housed? Why are we healthy? Why are we alive? Why are our loved ones alive? Why is the country still stable? Ultimately, do we have all these good things? Titus. Because of God, right? Thankfulness has to be directed at a person, and our thankfulness goes back to God again. But remember, it's not because he likes to be thanked. This is what helps us. And we're thankful to God because God has fulfilled his promises to us today. And Abraham may not have got himself into the situation he got himself into if he had been thankful for the day that even when he was in the midst of the famine, they were fed that day. He was secure that day. He was alive that day. That God had brought him this far. All the things that we can be thankful for as well. Okay, anybody have any comments or observations before we wrap it up in the prayer? Any thoughts on anything we've said? Does it make sense? Nathan?
I was just thinking of what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount. He's got that big section in chapter 6 where he talks about don't be anxious because God takes care of the birds and aren't you more important than they are. But at the end of that he says, but seek first God's kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So don't be anxious about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be anxious for itself, sufficient for the day is its own trouble. So this matches what you're saying, exactly matches what Jesus said. Don't worry about tomorrow.
Yep.
Thankful for today.
Good. Yeah, I was going to go to that text, but didn't have the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many texts.
Yeah, and that whole text that Nathan just quoted is a text about powerlessness.
Yeah.
Right? You can't make yourself, you can't turn one gray hair black. You can't make yourself inches taller. Really what Jesus is saying, look, you're powerless. Remember who's in control. Remember who has the power. And focus on the day. Don't let the worries take hold of you.
Well, the very beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, which is what I was thinking of earlier, the first thing Jesus says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Yes.
So when we remember that fact that we are powerless, that we are spiritually bankrupt, that we don't control our life, when we remember that, we're blessed.
Yes. Now, do you see, that's a great connection. I meant to go to it. When God calls Abraham, it's blessing, 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 blessing. When Jesus starts his ministry in the Sermon on the Mount, or not starts his ministry, but the central core of his message is blessing, 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 blessing. Right? Those two are not, there's no coincidence in that. Also, Abraham, when he talks to Israel, he pronounces blessing and cursing. Blessing and cursing. Again, blessing, 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 blessing. So there's no coincidence that Jesus at the Sermon on the Mount starts off with blessing, but a good point. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who are spiritually bankrupt. Okay, very good. Thank you for your comments, your observations. We'll wrap it up there tonight.